All right. Good evening, everyone. How are you guys today?
Hey, Joel, how's it going?
Hey, it's going really well. Hey, Brandon, I just wanted to say something tonight.
What's that?
You've been doing a really, really damn good job lately,
Thanks, Joel. I
and I
appreciate that.
appreciate you.
Thanks, Joel. Oh man, we'll have to tell people about that later. What we're talking about.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, we went through, I haven't been through that specific like personality test, but we did the love languages with me and my wife,
Yeah,
and we're so opposite, man. It's unreal. So, yeah, it everybody forgets sometimes, so remind your boss, be gentle with him and it'll snap him back into reality, hopefully. And if it doesn't, maybe it is time to look. Who knows? But guys, we are kicking off the last session before Vivek takes his test. So, give Vivek a bunch of claps right now. I want to see it. If you're online, clap it up. Good evening, Sean. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So Sean Delane is in the house, but give it up. Throw some claps out here for Vivek. He is taking his test. Ready or not, here it comes. This is his last big session before the test. So what we're doing is we're doubling up on questions today. Go ahead, Brandon.
is this all for Vivek, or is that what we're doing for today? This is Vivek show.
This is the Vivek show. Yeah. Well, and I told him he's coming on after he takes his exam next week, Tuesday, whether he likes it or not. So,
Oh, for sure.
absolutely. So get ready, buddy. We'll get you the link, and you got to come join us, even if it's just at the end for 10 minutes. I'll let you slip away with just a quick guest appearance, but you'll be here. Awesome. So good evening. I think everybody's hopping in. Let's see who's here real quick. We got Christine in the house. Welcome, Christine. Vivek, we got Sean. Thank you guys for joining. So let's go ahead and kick right off. Do you guys want to do a quick recap? Vivek, you want to recap? Let me know real quick. Brandon, should I run through last week's pictures real fast?
Yeah, just go through them quickly.
All right, let me pull them up.
Because I know we have a lot of questions to go through, and this is to help Vivek and everyone else. But we got a lot of questions we want to go through just to get everyone ready.
That is true. So let's get rocking and rolling. I do have to throw one up at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So let me start by pulling this one up real quick. And here we go. All right. So last week, oh no, Vivek, pass or fail, man. It doesn't matter. It's the effort that counts. You'll be here, man. I'm telling you. All right. First one up, ITSec versus TCSec. The way I remember this, TCSec is in the US. The way I remember the grading scale is how I got graded in school. Right? So A through D. And if you did any better than that, it's just words of encouragement from your teacher. Hey, you did really great. Awesome job. A through D. That's TCSec in the US. Different rating systems, but it addresses a single standalone system. In Europe or the EU, ITSec, and the way it grades is through two ways. And let me pull up that next picture so you guys can see that. Here we go. The way that is graded is through, it's going to make me turn it on every time, through functionality, which is F1 through F10, and then assurance, which is E0 through E6. Within assurance, an easy way to remember that is effectiveness. And ITSec uses the concepts of security targets and target evaluation. So, Vivek, you got any questions on these? Throw it in the chat. We'll bring up the question. We'll be sure to answer it. All right, moving on quick, though.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So when we go back over to TCSec, what is the Rainbow Series? Well, the Rainbow Series is a set of books. The books include Orange Book, the Red Book, and the Green Book. The Orange Book deals with the standalone system and addresses confidentiality. It's also the portion of this that addresses what we just talked about. So the E-score or the assurance portion, that's in the Orange Book for TCSec here in the States. The Red Book is for trusted networks, so that addresses DOS protection, compromise protection, and uses a 4 rating. So none, C1, C2, B2. And then the Green Book is password management. So that is your Rainbow Series. So if it says which one uses the Rainbow Series, the United States did, and it is TCSec. All right, next up. Here we go. We jumped into last week. Was what replaced those, Brandon? You remember?
Give me a second here. Which replaced which? Sorry.
ITSec and TCSec. What replaced them?
The common.
You got it.
Yeah, it was common something, wasn't it?
What? The common
criteria.
Oh, common criteria. Well done.
Woohoo!
You're going to pass, my friend. Developed by ISO, developed primarily to reduce the complexity, right, and to create a global standard. And you can see ISO 15408 is used for the basis of the evaluation, and it uses those EAL tags. So Vivek, real quick, let's throw up his question. He says, how do those compare to the ISO or common criteria? Common criteria replaced them, right? So they kind of merged the two into one and then came out with common criteria. The criteria, Sean is exactly right. So let's go ahead and jump into a couple examples of this real quick. Let's see what I got. Perfect. So the EAL packages, this is an important one. Let's go ahead and share this one up here, and then we'll wrap this up here momentarily with our review of last week because we got a lot of questions to rip through. So here are the EAL packages. It talks about simple verification all the way to very stringent verification. Remember that the security portion comes in at EAL level 5, right? So that's when, custom and additional security testing and the semi-formal testing occurs at level 5. All the rest is really the functional, secure, structurally, and methodically. And that starts the simple all the way down to stringent. Brandon, did I cover that one okay?
Perfect.
Yep. Let's go ahead and see what else we got. I don't want to forget anything. Let me see this one real quick. Nope, already covered that. Oh, okay, PCI. Ready? Brandon, what is PCI?
Well, actually, let's ask the group. Does everyone know? Because I know. PCI DSS.
Nice. What does it protect, and what is this? What kind of companies does it apply to?
Oh, I mean, you look at anyone that's dealing with financial information, right? So,
yep,
payment card infrastructure.
Boom, got it. Card holder information.
Yeah.
Right? And you can see there's 12 levels. It goes secure network, secure card holder data, vulnerability management, access control, network monitoring and testing, and then information security. You like that? Information. All right.
Are you just making words up now?
I'm just, you know what? It sounded good in the moment. And then let's talk about, last but definitely not least, we reviewed the threats, right? So salami threats, etc. But we're not going to go back over those because we got a lot of content today. Brandon, anything else that we should go over from last week in depth?
No, I think that's good. I think let's jump into the questions.
Boom. Let's do it. Here we go. Questions coming right up. I hope you guys are awake. If you guys are awake, I want to see a thumbs up real quick because these questions are coming at you fast. So thumbs up, clap, something. Let me know you're awake here in the chat. And let's go ahead and kick off with our questions. We got 10 questions today, so we're going to move quick. Throw your answer in the chat. I want to see it quick. So as soon as you think you know the answer, throw it in there. We're going to be rapid fire through this. So here we go. Question number 41. Mm-hmm. How should risk be handled when the cost of the countermeasure outweighs the cost of the risk? So the cost of the risk is higher than the cost of the countermeasure. No, the cost of the countermeasure outweighs the cost of the risk. Brandon, go.
So you're looking at this. I'm just kind of looking at the question here. So we got A, reject the risk. Mm-hmm. B, perform another risk analysis. C, accept the risk. Or D, reduce the risk. So I'm already seeing the answers come in, Vivek, as it says, accept the risk. So yeah, you're not going to reject the risk. Perform another risk assessment. Well, that's going to be costly. Reduce the risk. Well, how are you going to do that? So I think right now what you're looking at is, and Vivek just nailed it quickly, accept the risk. This guy's going to be ready.
I know, and he's fast, right? He's on it. We've been, even after hours, we've been quizzing each other. C, great job, Christine. Well done. Yep, you guys are awesome. All right, Christine, Sean, I want to see you in the mix. Let's get these answers in before Vivek. I want to see if anybody's ready, more ready than Vivek, right? So here we go. Yeah, you want to accept that risk, right? So if the cost of the countermeasure is more, you're not going to buy the countermeasure. You just accept the risk and you move on to a different risk. So question 42, here we go. Which one of these statements about the key elements of good configuration process is not true? So let's find all the things that are good configuration processes, and let's find the one that's not true. Brandon, ready to go.
So you're looking at accommodate the use of proven standards and best practices. I don't think so. Ensures
that is good configuration, right? Reusing proven standards and best practices. Yeah, that is on that list. Yep.
Right. Ensures that all requirements remain clear, secure, and valid. That's a good standard. That's what you're going to do, right?
100%.
Modifications to systems, hardware, in order to protect resources changes. I'm going to say with C.
Okay, but we got to read D. So ensure changes, standards, and requirements are communicated promptly and precisely. Nope, that's got to happen too. So you're right. You're not trying to prevent resource changes. This is about good configuration. If you have to change the configuration, you may have to have resources change. Let's see if you're right. C is correct. So hopefully that made sense to everybody. Yeah, you want to make sure all of these things happen when you're talking about good configuration processes, right? So you want to make sure you're using proven standards. Make sure that everything is clear, concise, and valid. Make sure that changes, standards, and requirements are communicated well. This one, preventing resource change, resources change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're changing configurations from bad to good, so that wouldn't be one of them. So well done.
Right.
Yeah, mix of answers there. Guys, it's okay. That was kind of a tricky one wording-wise, but you got to be prepared for it. All right, here we go. Question 43. Which of the following is not an administrative control, Brandon?
So you got A, logical access control mechanism, B, screening of personnel, B, and then C, development of policy, standards, procedures, guidelines, and then D, change control procedures. So which of the following is not an administrative control? Logical access control mechanisms. I'm going to say A because screening of personnel. No, it could be a measure. Development of policy standards, that is for sure. And then change control process, that is for sure. So the only one I say is not is the logical access control mechanism.
Whoop, whoop. Yep. So we got Christine with A. We got Vivek with A. We got Brandon with A. You guys are right. So remember, administrative controls, put yourself in the manager's shoes, in the CISO's shoes. What are you going to be doing? You're probably not going to be doing those hard controls or technical logical controls. Yep. So here it says technical controls are logical. That is not an administrative control. So well done, guys. All right, on to 44. Well done, team as well. Yep, absolutely. Vivek said it. Logical is technical. So here we go. This one is an interesting one. Brandon, before you take your guess, I want to see what everybody on here says.
Let's do it.
Which of the following outlined how senior management are responsible for the computer and infosec decisions they make and what actually took place within their organization? So walk us through it and then take your guess. Walk us through the answers.
Okay, so I'm going to walk through it. I want to see what everyone says. So A, the Computer Security Act of 1987, the federal Sentencing Guidelines of 1991, C, the Economic Espionage Act of 1996, and the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. Okay, so remember, the question is, which of the following outlines have senior management are responsible for computer and information security decisions, right, that they may make the actual look with their organization? So
I'm sending support their way, but I want to hear more answers than just Vivek. Guys, take a guess at which one. Even if you don't know, it's okay. We don't expect you to get some of these right. Take a guess.
So I'm looking at Computer Security Act. That could be it. The Economic Espionage Act. No, it's probably not it. And then the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I would say no. So I'm looking at B and C right now. And then the federal. What's that?
You mean A and B? So Computer Security Act or federal sentencing?
Sorry, just give me a second. The Computer Fraud and Abuse. Because it's a senior management of responsibility. So the Computer Fraud and Abuse, Computer Security Act. So I'm looking for B or D. I'm actually probably leaning towards more B. The Federal Sentencing Guidelines.
There you go. So, guys, we got a lot of A's in the crowd, but you have to think, right? This Computer Security Act, that's talking about computer security and what you're required to do. The Economic Espionage, that's about economics and espionage. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, that's about hacking and malicious intent. This is talking about senior management. What happens to them if they do not provide due diligence? It's B. Yep. So, guys, this is a good one to know. Also, 1991. Somebody give me what happened in 1991? Something awesome. I know. Google, you never know. Terminator 2, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, great movie. Hook, The Silence of the Lambs, Father of the Bride, Sleeping with the Enemy. Hopefully that gives you something. 1991, if it has to do with sentencing, that's going to be how senior management, it's going to keep them responsible. It also says down here that this act could be responsible for monetary damages up to 10 million or twice the gain of the offender for non-performance of due diligence. So huge. Yep, Sean, that's a great example. Enron, right? Guys, there's real consequences to being the CISO if you're going to try to do a lazy job, right? And not perform your due diligence. So, Salome, I like the facepalm. It's okay. Guys, that's why we're doing this. You got to take a stab at it. And if you're wrong, we learn from it, right? So let's move on. Question 45. What are the 3 fundamental principles of security, Brandon?
So what do we got here? Which one? 44?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 44. So we got... Oh, actually, hold on. I'm on the wrong question here. We are on... Just give me a second here. I'm just pulling this up. Well, you got the CIA triad, right? Just give me a second here. 47?
45.
Yeah, 45. For some reason, I don't have the right one, so I'm just going to pull up
You're
on
good.
the screen.
You're good. So we already got a couple guesses, but you already said the CIA triad, right? And everybody knows what that is. So let's hit it and move on. That is B. Great job, guys. Great job. 100%. That is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. All right. Now, Brandon, I'm going to kick 46 over to you. What would be best to define risk management? A, the process of eliminating risk. B, the process of assessing the risks. C, the process of reducing risk to an acceptable level. Or D, the process of transferring risk.
So I'm gonna go process of eliminating. I wouldn't say that. B, let me go through this again. So the best define risk management. The process of aligning the risk. No, I wouldn't say that. The process of assessing the risk. That's the best define risk management. You can assess the risk and that will define it. Then the process of transferring risk. Well, that's transference. So you're not going to do that. I would go C, the process of reducing risk to acceptable level.
Boom. Well done. Yeah, exactly what risk management is, right? We're trying to bring the risk down to an acceptable level, whether we have to transfer it, accept it, provide a solution around it. Reducing risk to an acceptable level is absolutely risk management. So great job to those. It looks like we have Richard Bird in the house, Peter Franklin in the house, who has a CISSP already. Welcome, guys. We're ripping through. Vivek's got his exam this Saturday, so we're doing a couple extra questions for him today. But great job guessing those. So let's go ahead and move on real quick. We did have a question in here I wanted to address. Sean Delane said, isn't the Computer Security Act for federal computers? Absolutely. What they were trying to do was actually define a baseline and kind of like not a minimally viable product, but the minimum security requirements required for federal computers and devices. So great question, Sean. All right. So let's go ahead and rock and roll on. We are on question 47. We got 3 more to go, guys. So stick with us and then we'll get into this week's content. Within the context of CBK, or the common body of knowledge, which of the following provides a minimum level of security acceptable for an environment? Brandon, your options are A, the baseline, B, the standard, C, the procedure, or D, the guideline. Ready, go.
So you got, A, the baseline. So the baseline of what you're just going to create as your baseline, policies, procedures, what you're doing. C is your standard is kind of what's in your baseline. Your procedures, your guidelines are all included. So I would go A, your baseline.
You go A, the baseline. That was quick. Well, let's give everybody a second. I already got Vivek with an A as well. Here we go. We got Salome with A. We got a few others. All right, perfect. Yep, let's go ahead and move on. We got a couple harder ones coming up, I think, if I remember correctly. No, they're pretty easy, but that's okay. Let's rip through them anyways. It's good to review. So related to information security, the guarantee that a message sent is the message received with the assurance that the message was not intentionally or unintentionally altered is an example of which of the following?
Okay, let's get these guys to answer that because this should be one that everyone's kind of rhyming off pretty quickly. You look at A, integrity, B, confidentiality, C, availability, and D, identity. We should all look at potentially, because it's not confidentiality. Availability means that it's access wherever you are, you can have access to it. The identity is identifying, or even when some people talk about identity, is us logging in and having our own identity. So if we're talking about data here, what are we talking about? Everyone's cutting this. Look at this. Vivek, Christine, right? A, yeah, A, it's integrity. The integrity of the data.
The integrity of the data. The info must be accurate, complete, and protected from unauthorized modification. Absolutely. Well done, guys. Richard Bird also with the correct answer. Well done, guys. And then Vivek said he can't sing, but he can rhyme. All right, 2 more questions. Sorry, I was wrong. 2 more. Which of the following is not a technical control? Password and resource management, identification and authentication methods, monitoring for physical intrusion, or IDS systems.
Okay, so password resource management. Okay, which is not
right.
technical control. So password and resource management is the technical control. I want to hear what you guys think. All right, identification authentication methods.
Yeah. Well, here's what Vivek said about that one. He said, hash all day, every day. I like it.
There you go.
Showed the wrong one.
Did you?
But he said A. So wait, so you said A is your answer, Vivek? Well, let's keep going through them. Is that a technical control?
So yes, password resource manager is a technical control. Identification and authentication methods are a technical control.
100%.
IAM, right?
Yep.
You got intrusion detection systems.
100% a technical control.
So monitoring a physical intrusion, is that a technical control?
No, it's not. It's
there you go.
Control, right?
There you go.
There we go. Well done, guys. Vivek, you gotta get those, my man. You gotta have that. Remember, that knot is gonna trick you. It's gonna get you. Well done. Looks like Peter, Richard as well. Yeah, Salome is gold and she's quick with it. Well done, Salome. Which of the following would not violate the due diligence concept? This one's huge. They're gonna really harp on due diligence and the code of ethics on this.
So which of the following is not a violation of the due diligence? So
you're looking for something that is due diligence in this question.
Right. So security policies being outdated, data owners not laying out the foundation of data protection. Hold on here. Network administrators not taking mandatory 2 weeks vacation, so as planned. And then D, latest security patches for servers being installed as per the patch management process. Well, if you go through that process right now, I mean, you're looking at D, right?
That's the best one to do. Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer. So well done, guys. We hope you learned a little something from our quick quiz section. Yep, give it up. Click some clapping hands for everybody, guys. You guys did awesome. Thanks for jumping in and joining us with this. And now, that was just a precursor to what we have to deliver today. So we got a lot of content for you. It's around understanding security capabilities of info systems. And then we're talking about all kinds of processing, multi-threading, memory protection, and exploits and vulnerabilities. And we're going to jump right in. You ready, Brandon?
Give me a second to pull out and let's get going.
Yep. Congrats, everybody. Well done on our quiz. Vivek, once again, buddy, you better be spending all day today and tomorrow just taking those practice exams.
Getting them ready. So one question for you guys, just a quick check-in. You know, since we've gone to Tuesday and Thursday, how are you guys liking this? Are you guys loving that we're doing more, kind of giving you guys more study time, going over more information? We want to see how you guys are doing it. And, you know, if you could share this with your colleagues, your friends, let them know to come out. The more people we get to study, the more we're going to learn from each other as well.
Yeah, and we're only in domain 4. So if somebody's studying for the CISSP already, you know, it's still a good time, because by the time you get to domain 4 and one of, you know, in this book, you're tired of reading chapters, and we're going to cover the rest in picture, video, content format with real world scenarios that you're going to be able to remember. So let's go ahead and kick this off. You ready, Brandon?
Let's do it.
All right. So when we're talking about security capabilities of InfoSec systems, this is going to include memory, virtualization, TPM, which stands for Trusted Platform Module, interfaces, and fault tolerance. It's also important to carefully assess each aspect of the infrastructure to ensure that it sufficiently supports security. Yeah, without a good understanding of this, you're not going to be able to evaluate them nor implement security controls properly. So over to memory protection. Brandon, take it away.
Memory protection is a core security component that must be designed and implemented into an operating system. It must be enforced regardless of the program executing the system. Otherwise, instability, violation of the integrity, denial of service, and disclosures are likely a result. Memory protection is used to prevent an active process from interacting with any of the areas of the memory that was not specifically assigned or allocated to it. Memory protection is discussed throughout Chapter 9 of these books.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do real quick is we're going to jump right into memory protection with Meltdown and Spectre. Those are two significant memory errors in 2017. So it was interesting because my dad actually used to work at Intel. He retired, and he was just like, he couldn't believe it because the amount of due diligence that Intel puts into their chips and into memory protection is unbelievable. But they focused on processing power and the capability to do more, and that's where these issues came from. So these problems arise due to the methods used by modern CPUs to predict future instructions to optimize performance. And I've got some pictures to really show you because it makes sense, right? When you're presented with a or B, true and false answer, it's able to calculate both of those so that when you choose, boom, you have a response. But what happens to the option you didn't choose? Well, we'll tell you here in a minute.
Nice. So you bring up that picture?
Yep. Yeah. Will you read that next little snippet real quick? And I got to find it real quick. I'm switching over from last week's.
Okay. So we're at Meltdown?
Yeah. So, yep.
So in the late 2017, two significant memory errors were discovered. These issues were given the names Meltdown and Spectre. These problems arise from the methods used by modern CPUs to predict future instructions to optimize performance.
I thought I had like a comparison of these, but that's okay. So we could talk to these a little bit. I actually have a really good infographic that's kind of like a cartoon that's going to explain this, and then I'm going to dig deeper into it. And they use the example of a trolley. So here's what I want to read to you today. So this is kind of like a Dilbert one, but let's walk through this. So in the first top left, they said the Meltdown and Spectre exploits use speculative execution. What is that? Well, you know the trolley problem. Well, for a while now, CPUs have basically been sending trolleys down both paths, quantum style, while awaiting your choice. And then the unneeded phantom trolley will disappear, right? So as I mentioned, you have two options, and then when you pick one, boom, they have the answer. Well, what happens to the phantom trolley? Well, the phantom trolley isn't supposed to touch anyone. It's supposed to be completely isolated and just disappear once the selection is chosen. But it turns out you can still use it to do stuff, and it can drive through walls. That sounds bad. Yeah, well, honestly, I've been assuming we're doomed ever since I learned about the row hammer, and we'll talk about that as well. What's that? Well, if you toggle a row of memory cells on and off really fast, it can use electrical interference and flip the bits nearby. The guy asked, do we just really suck at computers? Yeah, especially shared ones. So you're saying the cloud is full of phantom trolleys armed with hammers. Yep, that's exactly right. Oh, okay. So I'll install updates. Yeah, that's a good idea. So let's go ahead and kick over to this. So does everybody understand that? And I think, oh, I just kicked Brandon out. But yeah, let me find this picture because you guys need to understand this in a picture of what's exactly happening. Now, when we're talking about Phantom and Spectre, well, come on, where are you? I know it's in here. Aha. Perfect. Let's go ahead and pull this up. So when we're talking about speculative execution, this is exactly what's happening. So when you take a look at this, you could say, okay, if A is true, then execute. But what it does is it processes if A is false already, and it will take a different action, right? So the chip is actually going to compute both of those. But in another version, if a chip computes a certain function frequently, it may compute it even when not being asked to, just in case the function is needed. But you can take that function and you can actually exploit it, thus gaining access to the memory of other portions of that computer. So that is what Spectre and Meltdown are. And any questions on that? Vivek, do you understand? Hold on. Out of topic, but has anyone heard of Zuff or used it? Brandon, do you have any idea?
Zuff? No.
Zuff, Z-Z-U-F?
Let's look that up for him.
Oh, so hold on. Michelle, we also had a Michelle from Maryland asking how she joins our live feed on LinkedIn. She's having trouble finding it.
So I sent her the link.
You did. Awesome. LinkedIn video. Also, if you add us and send a connect to Brandon or myself real quick, let us know, and we will add you real quick so you can see the live stream. Also, Peter, great feedback real quick. Peter Franklin, who has the CISSP, phenomenal individual that we just met recently. But he says he highly recommends the 11th hour CISSP study guide for those who are about to take the test. And Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong. Do we have the digital version of that to share with everyone?
For that one, we have it in the Safari Books Online.
It's on Safari Books Online. Okay. We also have some resources. So if you need resources to help study for the CISSP study guide or study,
Certification.
Thank you. Reach out to us. We have some. We're happy to share.
For sure.
Cool. So let's go ahead and continue. Hopefully those make sense in regards to speculative execution, because it's important to understand. And once again, the crazy part is, while no nation state threat actor is going to compromise your device for Spectre Meltdown, because it would take a ton of man hours to do, where this really is causing people nervous sweats at night is in the cloud, because that same CPU is being used to compute multiple organizations' workloads. So what happens if you could have speculative execution on that CPU in GovCloud? Okay, now we got a problem, right? So yes, there are patches to remediate this, but Spectre and Meltdown are still going to haunt us for years to come. All right, Brandon, how'd we do?
Good. I think you're good. Does everyone get that? Does that all make sense? Because next we're going to go into the trusted platform module.
I think virtualization's next up. Actually, we got one quick one, and I'll cover it real quick. I think everybody's very familiar with virtualization. Virtualization is used to host one or more OSs on a single host computer, right? So think vSphere, VirtualBox, VMware Workstation. One of the ones that I always use, as you know, when I was doing FedRAMP assessment, of course, I had Kali Linux spun up on. I used VMware on my Mac and VirtualBox on my Windows device. But what I really liked using was, and I think is a great example for this, was Genymotion. And most of you probably haven't heard about this, but what Genymotion allows you to do is it allows you to virtually emulate a cell phone. So check this out. That's an Android device spun up and emulated on my computer, right? And you can see there, if you could scroll in, all the different versions of the Android API that you can spin up and use. You can pick any different kind of device. And what I would actually use that for is I would actually use that to do a portion of my pen testing on mobile applications. So that's virtualization in a nutshell. I could pull up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 phones virtualized on a single device. Pretty cool stuff.
So Joel, just to answer Vivek's question, what is ZUF? ZZUF. It's a transparent application input fuzzer. Its purpose is to find bugs in applications by corrupting their user-contributed data, which more than often comes from untrusted sources of the internet. It works in intercepting files and network operations and changing random bits in the program input.
Yeah. So it sounds like it does all that automatically. You know, I'm used to like doing bit flipping in Burp Suite. Like you can actually flip the bits and the pages and try to change stuff. So it sounds like that's an automated tool to do it. I'll have to take a peek after that and dig into more of the technical aspects of what it does. All right. Did you see it pop up on a CISSP quiz, Vivek? Because we may just have not gotten there yet, but yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, that was the first time. I mean, I'm not in your guys' world much where it comes to pen testing, all that, but yeah, seems like a pretty cool tool.
Yeah, absolutely. So cool. Well, go ahead and jump into Trusted Platform module for me, Brandon, and I'll get this next screenshot up and running.
Awesome. The Trusted Platform module, TPM, is both a specification for a crypto processor chip on a main board and the general name for implementation of a specification. An TPM chip is used to store and process cryptographic keys for the purpose of hardware, support, implementation, hardware drive encryption systems. Generally, a hardware implementation rather than a software-only implementation of a hard drive encryption is considered to be more secure.
Yeah, so let me ask a question. Does anybody know what happens if you're on a Windows device and you don't have a TPM and you want to enable BitLocker? Does anybody know? So I got a quick screenshot. So this is saying, okay, starting BitLocker up, which is, you know, it's basically encrypting your entire drive. This device can't use TPM because your admin must set the allow BitLocker without a compatible TPM option. Well, so what this does, the TPM is a chip. So it's a little chip. If you look it up, you'll see a little hardware chip on a processor that provides an added security feature. So when BitLocker uses TPM, what happens is it stores your encryption key on that TPM on the chip itself. Now, if you don't have a chip that supports TPM, you can actually use a USB stick, right? And what it's going to do is you're going to load that encryption key on your USB stick, and you'll use that to unlock your hard drive. So pretty cool stuff. So that's kind of what the TPM does. I think I have a little more context for it as well on, okay, cool. Here's a few examples of what the TPM can help defend against. You ready, Brandon?
Ready.
All right, here we go. Spinning up to you now. So key protection, right? The crypto provider can create keys in the TPM with restrictions of their use, but also dictionary attack protection, right? So keys that a TPM protects can require an authorization value such as a PIN, right? So you could require a PIN on your TPM before you can access those keys. And then dictionary attacks basically prevent any large amount of guesses, right? So if you're guessing the entire dictionary, yeah, not going to work because it can literally just return an error saying no more guesses are allowed for a certain period of time. So it protects your keys and it prevents against dictionary attacks. Come on, you're supposed to like.
I'm supposed to be there. I'm actually reading it. I'm actually reading, going through it because this is actually really interesting to me. Because, and just on a side note, quantum encryption, I'm hearing a lot more worried about. So I'm actually like really interested in now diving a little bit deeper into encryption and what's going on there, because with everything that's going on with quantum encryption and quantum encryption resilience and all that, it's really starting to become like mainstream. So something to really think about right now and keep your ear to the ground too.
Yeah, so Sean agreed. Yeah, you can do it without the chip. Of course, Windows throws a janky error out that nobody understands. You got to research it to figure out you can do it without one. Yeah, they want you to use a TPM or buy a new computer. They're probably advertising to everyone right now. Anyways, yeah, Sean, absolutely. You got to remember this CISSP content's from, I mean, I saw stuff 2013, 2015 on here. So there's some older content. So if you got to think, if they're making content in 2013, they're looking at computers from 2011, 2010 that may have not, I don't know. I don't know when the TPM started coming around. I'm guessing around that time frame. Yeah, and then Richard Bird said brute force. Absolutely. Yep, that dictionary attack, that is definitely a type of brute force attack. So great ad there. All right, let's jump down and let's get into, oh, I like this one. Cool. This is HSM.
Mm-hmm. The Hardware Security Module, HSM, is a crypto processor used to manage, store digital encryption keys, accelerate crypto operations, support faster digital signatures, and improve authentication. An HSM is often an add-on adapter or peripheral, or can be a transmission control protocol, internet protocol, as all we know, TCP/IP network device. HSM includes tamper protection to prevent their misuse, even if a physical access is gained by an attacker. A TPM is just one example of HSM.
Yeah, there you go. So a TPM is an example of an HSM. I know Vivek mentioned a different type that he was accustomed to seeing in the Fed space, but you can have small TPMs, but they can also be server rack size HSMs. Also, HSM stands for High School Musical, but that's not the HSM we're talking about. Okay, we're talking about an HSM that now I got to find the other picture. Hold on. An HSM that can be on-prem, but also if you look up, and so I saw HSM, I'm like, oh, AWS actually has this. So you can actually use an HSM in the cloud. Well, how does this work? Well, the HSM, you actually, it lives in the AWS data center. Oh, Vivek says he likes the other type of HSM. So High School Musical is his jam.
Nice.
But anyways, so if you look at this picture that I'm throwing up real quick, they have an AWS Cloud HSM, which handles all your key management. They manage the HSM, but they have no access to your keys, right? So basically, it will store the keys that your EC2 instances will use. So instead of hosting your own HSM on-prem and making your EC2 instances reach on-prem, grab the keys in order to use them, use the AWS one. It's right there in the same data center. It'll access them, low latency. Good stuff. So that's how the HSM works. It is a physical device in a data center and helps hold and protect those keys. Cool. All right, let's got a couple comments down here real quick.
Yep.
Yep. So Vivek says High School Musical is his jam. Sean says, but there's a global chip shortage right now, so that is delaying the availability of some computers. That's interesting. Did you know that, Brandon?
No, I didn't know that. I knew there was a delay because of the supply chain. I just didn't know it was just because of the processors and the TPM chips. And
Yeah. That's kind of crazy. I mean, I knew there was like a shortage of washers and dryers because we had to buy a new one, but that's just because the sheet metal was shipped from overseas and COVID threw it all off. Sean, is this a COVID shortage? I'm curious to know more. And he also said Azure does the same. Yeah, most of the cloud service, I'm sure GCP does it too, but they realized very quickly, to reduce latency, you have to have an HSM on-prem so that your virtual machines in their data center can access it quickly. And Peter said it's been around since 2003. Peter, real quick, will you clarify what's been around since 2003? Yeah, I'm just curious on that side. So let's go ahead and jump on. I don't think High School Musical's been around since 2003. If it has been, I'm really old. All right, but let's go ahead and talk about interfaces. Brandon, I'll kick it over to you.
Perfect. A constrained or restricted interface is implemented within an application to restrict what users can do or see based on their privileges. Users with full privileges have access to all the capabilities of the application. Users with restricted privileges have limited access.
Yep. So you got to remember, real quick, Vivek, Clark Wilson model, ready, go. I want to see it in the chat. What is the Clark Wilson model? Because the restricted interfaces, right? If we're talking about restricted interfaces, this directly applies. So go ahead and run. I want to type as quick as you can, my man. This question's on you. What is the Clark Wilson model? But I'll talk through it. So applications constrain the interface using different methods, right? So not everybody will have access to certain features. A common method is to hide the capability if the user doesn't have permission to it. Commands might be available to administrators via menu by clicking the right item. But if a regular user doesn't have the permissions, the command or feature doesn't even appear. And it could be dimmed or disabled, and the regular user may not be able to see it. So a couple things on this. From application security, making it disappear off the screen may not be the safest way to go about this, right? Mm-hmm. You should probably have the capability to remove that function completely. Because I know from my perspective, when I was doing FedRAMP pen tests, I had a administrator session open right next to an unprivileged user session. And I'm taking the request that I'm sending for that privileged account, and I'm attempting to send it for the unprivileged account to see if I can gain access to those resources. I mean, I do that a lot. So you can't just make it disappear so I can't see it. That functionality cannot be present in an unauthenticated user. So here we go. Yep, so perfect. Yep, that constrained, the CDI and the UDI, it needs a program in between. So what the Clark Wilson model is you have your user and you have your database, or your constrained, restricted interface is how they called it here. But you have your data over here. And the only way to access the database by the user is through an application in the middle. That's the Clark Wilson model. All right. Fault tolerance, Brandon, will you kick us off on that, and I'll pull up the next picture?
Sure. The fault tolerance is the ability of the system to suffer a fault but continue to operate. Fault tolerance is achieved by adding redundant components such as additional disks within a redundant array of inexpensive disks, RAID array, or additionally servers without a failover cluster configuration. Fault tolerance is an essential element of security design. It also considers part of the avoiding single points of failure and implementation of redundancy. And then you're going to bring up the...
Spot on. I gotcha. So it's really simple when you get a visual. What does fault tolerance or failover look like? This is exactly what it looks like. So you'll have a load balancer in between three data centers. Sometimes each of those data centers, A, B, and C, they can have some fault tolerance built into them. Like they could have the same web server spun up on that data center. And so if one of them fails, it'll cycle over to data center A and B. And if all three of them fail, you have a completely separate failover or standby server in a different region, in a different VPC even, right? And you can go VPC pairing. Once again, I'm throwing in cloud references, but you have a failover with a standby server, so you're fault tolerant. So if a disaster, let me rephrase that, when a disaster or an outage occurs, you have redundancy.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Cool. And guys, once again, we assume you guys know some of this, but it's in there. I talk to Brandon, and every time I'm like, Brandon, can we please cut some of this out? Like, everybody knows this stuff. And Brandon says, but what if you don't cover it and they don't? So that's why we're covering it for you guys, and we're going through everything.
And then Vivek made a comment, RAID 10 is best, ? 4 or more HDs, so hard drives.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I know, is RAID 10 the best? Well, it definitely requires the most hard drive space. I want to say RAID 6 is what people are going to, the double parity RAID. It's one of several that's, yeah, so not all types of RAID offer redundancy, but RAID 6 does. I would look into RAID 6. I think, I don't know. I'll have to do the comparison later. But I'll sync with you offline, and I'll do a. Oh, he says no, don't. It's in perspective. Yes. Okay. But yeah, I'll do that, and I'll figure out which one is the best. Once again, each RAID version is useful for different implementations. All right. I think this kicks off a new domain, or just a new chapter in the domain. Brandon, do you remember?
This is now a new. No, there's actually a new chapter. We just got the chapter, so this is a new area because this was a new chapter that we were going through in the book. And I was just actually looking up RAID for Vivek, and they were saying RAID 5 or RAID 50 it gets kind of the best, but like you said, then they were starting to go through RAID 6.
Yeah. So we got, I think this is my favorite comment today. Dick Wilsonson, CSISO, and PMP says more is always better, America. So there we go. I don't know, Brandon, you shouldn't take offense to that, but I'm sure you already know that, more fireworks, more flags, more hard drives, America. Okay. Also, here we go. Peter Franklin. So when he said 2003, he said the tech behind the chip, and I'm guessing he's talking about the TPM chip. So started in 2003. They've been around for a while. Geez, what was that before 2003? Were those single core processors? I mean, yeah, I'm thinking they probably were. Maybe dual core. I bet dual core was out back then. Yeah, got you RAID 6. And then what do we have? Okay, yep. Sean also said, he said, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Having multiple disk controllers and RAID arrays is best, depending on the application for fault tolerance, but that will cost more. Absolutely, right? So it depends on what your budget is. It always comes back around to budget, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sean.
For sure.
All right. You ready for the next step? How are we doing on time? 20 already?
Yeah, so we got 10 more minutes.
Okay.
So this is access mitigation security vulnerability. So yeah, it's another whole section.
Well, so hold on. I don't think we get to the mitigate security vulnerabilities yet. What we're talking about now is hardware, and hardware is basically the tangible stuff of a computer that you can reach out and touch, right? It's in the book. We're covering it. That's the hardware. Brandon, anything else that you want to cover on the hardware section?
Well, everyone knows hardware, processor, right? If you guys have any questions about that? I know you got, looks like an image here, the Moore's Law.
That's for the processor down below a little bit, but still talking about hardware. I think the one difference you'll need to know is a hard drive, since we're talking about RAID. Hard drive, yes, that's hardware, but what's stored on the hard drive or flash memory, it varies. Sometimes they consider it hardware, sometimes they don't. Because you can't reach inside your hard drive and pull out bits, right? It just doesn't quite work that way. So be careful. Watch the wording on this exam when it comes to that. But yeah, over to processors now. The CPU, we've talked about that a little bit. The processor or the microprocessor, it's the computer's nerve center. It's the chip or chips in a multiprocessor system that governs all major operations in the computer, either directly or coordinates it with the other features of the computer. And then if you want to go through some of that, the important stuff in that, Brandon, I'm going to pull up that Moore's Law image.
Yeah, that's perfect. And then surprisingly, the CPU is capable of performing only a limited set of computations and logical operations. Despite the complexity of the task it's allowed the computer to perform, it is the responsibility of the operating system and compiler to translate high-level programming language used to design software into simple assembly language instructions that a CPU understands. This limited range of functionality is intentional, and allows CPUs to perform computational and logical operations at blazing speed.
Yeah, so let's talk processors. So I know I've mentioned a couple times, Dad worked for Intel. He mostly did the hard the SSDs, so the solid state drive, the SSDs.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been in fabs. We moved around the West Coast a lot because we were basically following the new fabs that popped up. So this picture is Moore's law, and the law is that the number of transistors on a microchip will double every 2 years. So you can see this is basically linear, right? From 1970 all the way to 2020, we are doubling the amount of transistors on a chip. We've gone from 1,000 transistors to, what is that, 50 billion? Does that say 50 billion? Yeah, that's 50 billion.
I think
That's
so.
insane. So one of the questions I always get when I talk about Moore's law with anybody is, okay, so why do you have to double them, right? And the process of making chips is unreal. Check it out on YouTube sometime. It's really cool. Those fabs are super high tech. But why more? What does more do for you? Well, yes, we're putting more in there, but the reason why we can put more in there is because the transistors are getting smaller. And the smaller a transistor, the less voltage it takes to power a transistor. AKA, the smaller it is, the more transistors we can pack into a chip, the smaller the chip sizes get, which makes putting a chip into a cell phone these days simple, right? Because the chips are so small. One of the other reasons it's important and that the transistors are getting smaller is that because it requires less energy to use those transistors, the amount of heat it produces goes down. So if you guys have seen the heat sinks we put on computers, us nerds put on computers, they're massive, right? Because you have to disperse all this heat that's being generated by all these transistors. Well, a decade ago, it was producing just as much heat, but it had a heck of a lot less transistors than we get today. Right. So any questions that pop up for you, Brandon, or anybody else in the crowd around transistors and microprocessors, happy to answer them. Shoot them in the text. More is better, America.
Here we go. Fireworks. Nice. I guess for me, for the transistors, as we're talking with this, are we evolving in security? As we get in these more complicated, transistors, smaller devices, things like that. How is that related to like our new innovation with AI and new technology? And just how's that working? I love to kind of to have that conversation, like, because we're just evolving. Like, you look at 2000. Okay, I'm going to date myself, but I mean the 80s, right? In the 90s, you had like pagers and this massive cell phone, right? Like it was huge, right? And all you could do is dial. You couldn't see caller ID and all that. And now, like, we got our smartphones, right? I mean, literally, you can do all your work from it. It's getting smaller. Mm-hmm. But then the security aspect of it is just like so much more complicated. And then you're talking about like the transistors, the processors, the data, the hardware, right? Just along that line.
Yeah, the security of it is really tough. So it's been interesting to see this microprocessor battle happen between Intel, NVIDIA, Apple creating their own chips and doing it faster and coming out with more powerful on different NM, right? So, but the faster they do it, you got to think the less security checks they're probably implementing along the way. So that's one reason I know I'm a little jaded. I still buy Intel, even if you can clock different processors to AMD processors to ridiculous speeds, because I've seen it and I've witnessed that they are just relentless on quality and security. So, but yeah, no, I mean, like Spectre and Meltdown, right? Spectre impacted all kinds of chips, almost all of them, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was all of them. So then they came out with some patches for BIOS, but then they have to address that in the new generation of chip. Like, you can't release a new chip with Spectre or Meltdown on it. You just can't. So, as these become disclosed, as they rear their head, well, we address security even more. Kind of like SolarWinds, right? Do you know how many billions of dollars are being written to security right now? It's bonkers.
It's crazy. Bonkers.
Yeah. All right. Next is execution types. And if you want to walk through that, we're really going to jump into multitasking, multi-core, multi-processing, and multi-threaded. Vivek, do you know the difference between all those? Ready, go.
So as a computer processor, power increases. Users demand more advanced features to enable these systems to process information at a greater rates and to manage multiple functions simultaneously. Computer engineers devise several methods to meet these demands.
Yeah, so let's jump in real quick. Let's jump into multitasking. I got some really good pictures for you guys. And once again, none of these pictures are in the content you guys are going to find in the books, in the study guides, nowhere, right? This is stuff that Brandon and I have dug for so we can explain it really well to you. So let's go ahead and pull this up real quick. We're going to talk first about multitasking because, Vivek, you got to be able to differentiate these when it comes down to it. So let me find this one real quick. First, I got to pop a can real quick. No, it's not beer. I'm currently in dry January. I don't recommend it, but I do recommend it at the same time. But let's go ahead and get into...
Let's go to multitasking, then after you can explain what dry January means.
While I find this, dry January is not drinking any alcohol.
So Joel's actually been fairly clean over the last, 3 weeks, month? 2
Yeah,
months?
I haven't been drinking coffee, no alcohol. It's not as depressing as I thought.
Clean eating.
That's right. Okay. Cool.
Wife's been making the meals and kind of seeing them. As we're prepping, wife's bringing kind of snacks and things he's eating.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, but it's like things like air fried Brussels sprouts as a snack. So don't get too jealous. Okay. Anyways, let's get rocking and rolling. Here we go. This is, I know it's small, but just read the CPU usage in the box. So this was actually taken on a single core processor. So we have to talk about what a processor does when you only have a single core. Well, what does it do? It multitasks. So on a single core processor or a computer that has a single core processor, you can still have Word up and a Google Chrome browser. But wait a second, how do you run two at the same time? So you're telling me if I'm using Google Chrome and I go to type something in Word, like it'll still appear? How does that happen if I only have a single core that can work on one thing at a time? Well, it multitasks. It's going to split that up really quick. So it appears like it's doing more than one thing at a time. So if you can see in there, a single core is running 50% CPU on each task. Now, when you try to multi-thread something on a single core processor, there's about this much gain in efficiency. Absolutely nothing, because you still only have one core. So trying to push more processes and more threads through, it doesn't work. It's just going to keep multitasking to the best of its ability on that one core. So I think the only way to get a one core processor anywhere is like jump on an old school Raspberry Pi. Even the new Raspberry Pis have dual and quad core processors. So, all right, but let's move on to the next one. Oh, did I exit Finder? Any questions on that though, Brandon, that came up?
No question on that. Now we're at 8:30.
I mean, we gotta keep going. But guys, let's. Peter Franklin says he likes air fried Brussels sprouts. You know what? They're growing on me. But I do have to throw this up for everyone to see. So I'm not crazy. Brussels sprouts. I tried eating them raw. Okay, air fried Brussels sprouts. It makes a difference. If you don't know what an air fryer is, check it out. We just got one for Christmas, and you don't use any oil, so it's healthier, I guess. Goes down not quite as smooth, but hey, it is what it is. All right, so if you have to jump at 8:30, guys, thank you for joining us. Once again, my name is Joel Bork. Brandon Usato is my co-host. Brandon Krieger from Usato is my co-host, and he looks good doing it. So thank you guys for joining us. If you got to hop off. If not, stick around for a few more minutes. We're going to wrap up explaining the differences. Is that fair, Brandon?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. So let's go. That was single core. Let's talk about multi-core not threaded, right? So I got a picture here for you. I wanted to get you guys really good examples so you could understand what's happening. So this is multi-core processor. Look in the top left-hand corner of this picture. I think hopefully it's not flipped for you guys, but top left-hand corner, you can see percent of CPU being used is 25%.
So you bring up a picture?
Oh, did I not activate it?
No, there you go. There you go.
Top left-hand corner, you can see percent of CPUs being used is 25%. Okay, multi-core processor, we're not threading anything, right? It's just one process being run that's not multi-threaded. So you can see in that middle circle, oval, square thing, that 100% of the CPU is being used. Wait a second, it says 25%, but 100%? That's because it's using 100% of one core. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So you're using 25% of your total CPU because you're only using one core when you have 4 cores on it. But it says 100% CPU for that task because you're maxing out that one core. So that is not multi-threaded. So it's just running that process on a multi-core processor. Now, let's move over and let me show you what a threaded multi-core would look like. So what happens when I'm running a threaded application on a multi-core processing? Well, let's first talk about multi-threading. Multi-threading is when I have one program or one application, so it's all bundled. All these threads are going to use the same files, the same resources, everything in one program, but it's going to push different threads so they can happen in parallel, right? So multi-threads are built into a program or application so it can access additional resources and run processes in tandem. So as you're doing one thing, it's processing something simultaneously in another. That's multi-threading. So take a peek at this one. You can see top left-hand corner, CPU being used 100%. Well, what does that mean if I have 4 cores? Well, look down at that process. I'm only running one program, but it's built to multi-thread. So now I'm using 400% CPU because I'm topping out all 4 of those cores.
Makes sense.
Cool. All right. So hold on. Will you head back to the chat and see if there's any questions on this before I throw it away?
Yeah. We got good stuff. Good. Richard said, give me a second here. Good stuff, guys. Thank you so much, Richard.
Awesome. Richard, thank you, sir, for joining us. I appreciate you. We got to talk here soon about next week.
Then we got Vivek. Let's hold on, Joel.
Sorry.
There we go. Let's do it. He's going to go over time. He doesn't mind. He's doing his test. Then Vivek mentioned here, he said sharing the workload is threading. And then he showed over here, next question or next comment is 2 times 2 plus 3 times 3 can be done on 2 different processors before the final add. So,
well, so I think he's talking about multi-processing. Right. So multi-processing is a multi-processing computer system that's harnessing the power of multiple CPUs. Mm-hmm. So that's multi-processing. And then those will add those together, right? So if you have multiple cores on each one, then it will add those, and that's what multi-processing is. Mm-hmm. So cool. I think that's pretty good multi-threading, and that was the end. That was all we had. So we were only over 5 minutes, Brandon.
But we hit it.
We hit it. Awesome. Vivek, I hope you're feeling well. Expect a pop quiz from me this evening after the show. Peter Franklin, thanks for joining. Richard Bird, you guys all rock. Salome, Christine, Dick Wilkinson, thank you guys all. Sean Delane, guys, each and every one of you, thank you for joining. And even more importantly, thanks for participating with us. You guys are what we do this for. So when you guys are engaged and you guys are actively learning with us, I mean, we're learning every single day we do this too. So
come on, Joel, let's be a little selfish. We're actually doing this because we want to learn too, right?
100%. But we're on here and we're teaching the content, and we do it for us and for you.
Oh, for sure. We're learning from you guys.
Yep, totally. Right. And your guys' perspective is invaluable. So once again, this was episode 22 of Cutting into Cybersecurity with Brandon and Joel. Guys, thank you all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your evening, and stay safe out there, guys. And this is where you cue the outro music. Okay, here we go.